All right. Good morning, everybody. Or should I say top of the morning to you as we celebrate another round of St. Patrick's Day today. So hopefully everyone is in good spirit and will find a wonderful way to celebrate the holiday with family and friends. I am Daniel Pullen, and I have the distinct honor of serving as the John V. Roach Dean here at TCU's Neely School of Business. And it has been quite a year as we mark milestone days. It's just about a year ago that we had the challenge, candidly, of moving our instruction to a remote format in response to the growing global pandemic of COVID-19. And I can tell you that both in those early days and in the months and now years since, I could not be more proud of the way our faculty and students and alumni and business collaborators, amazing staff, and those who care a great deal about this very special institution have rallied together to be as agile as it gets, to be leaders and innovators in the way that our Neely promise, which is really our brand expectation that we make to our stakeholders every day, compels us to do. And I can tell you on behalf of my wife, Tamara, and my family, we could not be more pleased to have the opportunity to serve at a place that values leadership and values innovation in the way that TCU and the Neely School of Business does. Said simply, the Neely promise is to unleash human potential with leadership at the core and innovation in our spirit. And how lucky are we to have had that promise to lean into as we led through difficult moments, as we found new ways to educate our students, new ways, just as we are today, to connect and engage and connect our community in such an important way. It is just a distinct pleasure to be a part of it all. Lots been going on in the Neely School, as you might imagine. I'm very proud of our students. I've had the chance I'm actually going to teach 3 classes this year, which is a lot for me, but they keep letting me do it, so I'm going to keep at it. And in each of my classes, both the undergraduate level and all the way to our executive MBA program, I have been inspired by our students. I have been impressed by the diligence they put into their studies, that they're not going to let a silly global pandemic get in the way of their academic and professional progress. And we're seeing that borne out by the marketplace. Our placement rates, even through the challenges of our time, have remained near 100%. Our starting salaries are among the highest in the country coming out of undergraduate level. We're pushing even higher at the graduate level than ever before. And a lot of that has to do with the capabilities of our students, how well they've been educated and trained by our world-class faculty, but also has to do with good folks like you. I know so many of you joining us here today are business leaders, alumni, steadfast supporters. And when we've made the call, you've answered it. In many ways, creating jobs and creating internships and hiring Horned Frogs in a way that's been so valuable and important for our students to get on the right track as they move forward in their career and their life. And so many of you are on the call today, and I just want to say thank you for being creative, being a leader, and really allowing our students, now graduates, the chance to succeed. Everywhere we look, even though we've had to do a number of remotely, I'm very proud to see our centers of excellence continue to operate at the intersection of the academy and industry. In so many ways, the way we're partnering with the private sector allows us to ensure that our curriculum is on the cutting edge of business thought, that we're preparing our students to add value day one upon graduation, and that we're really listening to the marketplace, because we want to be as relevant and capable as we prepare all of our students to be the culturally competent global citizens our world needs. Some of you joined us just a couple of weeks ago when we took a huge step forward in our commitment to an accessible, inclusive culture. We opened one of which is only about 25 in the country across all business schools, the Office of Inclusive Excellence, to ensure that we're able to attract and retain and propel talent wherever we can find it, from whatever starting point, to ensure that all of our students have the opportunity to be the most successful they can in both their career and in their life. And so when you look at it from the curriculum advancements, the strength of our students, the placements, our commitment to a connected community and accessible learning environment, it's been a challenging year, but boy, it's been one filled with buckets and buckets of progress. So if you had any small part in that or a whole big part in that, I just want to say thank you on behalf of Tamara and the whole Pullen family. You've made our job a real joy and very inspirational for us as we move forward in our lives. I am excited to once again be holding, even though it's virtual in format, it's allowing us to attract some folks from all over the country, all over the world to participate with us. So I think that's a silver lining and a blessing in a lot of ways. Of course, we could not conduct this speaker series. We could not aspire to the level of talent that we're able to bring aboard without the support of our sponsors. The premier sponsor, the platinum sponsor is of course Frost Bank. And so I thought that we might show a short clip about what's going on at Frost Bank and then introduce one of their leaders thereafter.
Hello, this is Cornell with Frost Bank.
Hi there, this is Terry with Frost.
Good evening, this is Franklin.
This is Robert with Frost.
Hello, this is Rosemary with Frost Bank.
All right, thank you. At this time, I'd like to introduce someone that's just been a huge cheerleader, a great supporter, a friend, and has really, pushed me and motivated me to advance this business school in a lot of ways. It's Frost Bank's Tarrant Market President, Hadley Warner. Hadley, thanks for joining us this morning.
Good morning, Daniel, and it's a pleasure to be here. And I just applaud the tremendous efforts that you and the Neely School have done in navigating through the last 12 months. It's just been phenomenal. And I also wanted to take just a moment to say how proud I am of the incredible efforts of Frost bankers across Fort Worth, the Metroplex, and the state, who embraced just an incredible Herculean, heroic effort over the last 12 months, especially a year ago at this time, in embracing the PPP program when we didn't know a lot, but we had to get creative and innovative and figure out solutions, and we did. And by working 24/7 and answering the calls of so many small businesses, similar to the calls you heard coming in, just with an opportunistic attitude to embrace helping those businesses navigate through the challenges. And we did that and became one of the leaders across the country in helping more than 30,000 small businesses apply for more than $4 billion in PPP loans. And that's right here in the state of Texas. And that's Texans helping Texans. And I'm just so proud of the efforts of our bankers. I'm also proud of the incredible relationship we've had with TCU, the Neely School, and the Tandy Executive Speaker Series for so many years. And we're excited, quite frankly, to hear the conversation this morning. So I'm ready to listen. And Daniel, I'll turn it back to you.
All right. Well, thank you, Hadley, and congratulations on what you and your teams have been accomplishing. And I think that's just sort of an elegant segue into our topic today, which is around teams and innovation and enduring competitiveness of the enterprises as we look ahead. And I know I've benefited from a great team here at Neely and across TCU, and certainly you have as well. And so to dive into that topic at a greater depth is a great opportunity for us. And this opportunity today, candidly, was talked about alums digging in and engaging in such a way. A proud TCU alum, Neely alum, Dave Moran out of Connecticut, has been such a supporter of everything that we're doing around innovation and entrepreneurship and leadership. He's very involved in our Richard Barentine Values and Ventures business plan competition. the largest undergraduate competition in the country. He's been with me on the journey through my 3 classes this year. He's a regular guest speaker and is very inspirational. I think he's on the call, and he had everything to do with introducing the Neely School to Bryan Mattimore, our keynote speaker today. So Dave, I know you're out there somewhere. Thank you for making this possible for so many. So today we're excited to welcome to the TCU family Bryan W. Mattimore. If you read his bio on the invite, you know he is both the co-founder and probably the coolest title on any business card I can think of, Chief Idea Guy of the Growth Engine Company, which is celebrating just over 2 decades of innovation and creativity, leading, I think has relationships with, I think, 1/3 or more of the Fortune 500 companies. So really having heavy fingerprints on business as we know it, as it evolves in a dynamic and uncertain world. In his consulting career, he has managed over 200 successful innovation projects, which have combined to create over $3 billion in new sales. Pretty remarkable. He is a best-selling author of 3 books, including Idea Stormers, How to Lead and Inspire Creative Breakthroughs, and 21 Days to a Big Idea, which is kind of exciting, and hopefully we'll be able to unpack that a bit. He's a cum laude graduate from Dartmouth. He majored in psychology, which is very connected to business, as I learn each and every day. And he's on the board of advisors for the Global Innovation Institute. And he also spends a little time in the classroom. He's an innovation and marketing instructor for Caltech. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Bryan Mattimore. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks, Daniel. Welcome, everybody. Thanks to Dave Moran, who's a 30-year, or we'll say 20-year friend. And we've done work with Dave over the years at many of the companies he's worked for. So everybody on the call, I realize there are different audiences here. There's students, there are professors, there are administrators, there are business owners, there are aspiring entrepreneurs, et cetera. And so I'm hoping my talk today will be useful to all you guys. The title of the talk is Innovating the Future by Inspiring and Empowering Teams of Ingenious Problem Solvers. I'm actually going to hit 3 levels of inspiration. So there'll be the sort of cultural level, sort of organization-wide. There'll be, if you will, the team level, and then there'll be the individual level. And I'll try to tell some stories. I'll sort of mention some techniques. I'm hoping this is the seed of something that becomes much bigger for everyone, where you become, if you will, experts, or at least comfortable with some of the stuff I'm going to share. And toward that end, I really want to, one of the techniques, known techniques is, quote, the wish technique. And so I said, well, what's my wish for this presentation I'm going to do? And my wish is that for some of you, it'll actually be life-changing. And I realize that's a huge promise, but I'll give you a real-world example of this. Peter Uberoff, who many of you probably don't know, some of the older folks I'm sure do, but he was, in charge of the Olympics in Los Angeles, and he went on to be the baseball commissioner. And then he was also head of the U.S. Olympic Committee. And believe it or not, he was named Times Man of the Year in 1984. He beat out Reagan. So even if you don't know his name, he was a very accomplished guy. And the anecdote I want to share about him, he early on in his career, he attended a Young Presidents organization. And the speaker was Edward de Bono, who's famous in my world, has written a whole bunch of books on creative process. His most famous thought is lateral thinking, where you sort of, instead of continuing to drill down in the same area, you go into different areas of lateral thinking and bring that back to your challenge. Well, he had said at that talk that de Bono gave that it changed his life, because he realized that he needed to be much more innovative and open to new ideas and creative in the process. So that's my hope for pretty much everybody in the audience, that they will take some of the stuff I'm sharing and use it to reinvent their careers and themselves and their businesses. By the way, I know a lot of futurists, and it's interesting. Where are we going to go for jobs in the future, right? I mean, you look at even in finance. I have a friend who's an AI expert, and he said one of the financial institutions he knows well just fired 100 people because they replaced them with AI, artificial intelligence processes. So well, what's your point of difference? What's not going to go away? And my bias and the future is to sort of reinforce that. It's creativity and innovation and making new connections. So that's what I want to share with you today, and I'll get into it. And as I say, I'm going to try to share some stories because 3 months from now, that'll probably be the only thing you remember of what I've said. So here goes. Let me start at the cultural level or the institution-wide level. You can hire one of the large, McKinsey, Bains, BCGs, Accentures, Ernst & Young, Deloitte, whatever. They all have innovation practices, and they'll come in, and not that this is bad, but this is my straw man here. They'll come in and say, okay, well, we need this process and this process and this process. In my company, Growth Engine, we do the exact opposite, which, by the way, is not a bad strategy sometimes, to do the exact opposite of what everybody else is doing. We actually start from the bottom up, or inductively, if you want to call it that. And we go in and say, listen, we want a process change for you guys to be a result of a project. So give us a project, give us your worst performing division or your worst performing brand, and we'll do a project to innovate that. And in the process, we'll learn what processes make sense for you guys, because every industry is different, every culture is different, every company is different. And so we then build the processes based on what we learned from working with them. The good thing too for the organizations is they get an immediate ROI, hopefully, if we succeed in that project. By the way, besides saying give us your worst division, we'll also say give us your best or your best brands. And why is that an innovation challenge? It's a challenge because who wants to change if they're setting record profits, right? I mean, that's the last thing you want to do is change this thing. And that's why, side note here, we developed a process called disruptive wargaming, where for instance, we were working with the largest vision care insurance company in the world, and they had record profits. And so how are we going to help them be more innovative? Do you think those sales guys are going to change after they had record profits? But what we did was we called it disruptive wargaming. And we said, well, what if Amazon, Google, or Walmart gets in the vision care insurance business? Will that change your business? Well, yeah, it could. It actually could put them out of business, right? And so as a result of that, the sales guys had a newfound humility, and they actually came up to us several months after these sessions and said, we're going to go to market in an entirely different way, and we're going to be much more humble about the services we're selling. So that's at the institutional level, or organizational is probably a better way to say it. That being said, we also do work from the quote top down, in that making sure that the company's vision, mission, values are really aligned. And that, first of all, that they have them, and secondly, that they're practicing them. So they're not about, plaques on the wall in any shape or form. And particularly for the employees, the value side of this, that the company has clear values and that they are reinforcing those values. We worked with a large real estate firm, and they were it was in a very enlightened firm and wonderful. And so we helped them identify those values. And then the key step is we ran ideation or brainstorming sessions, as you might call it, with all their employees to say, well, how do we activate these values in our daily job? So how do we change our behavior to actually reflect those values? And so if one of the values is be a pioneer, then we would take that value and ideate, well, you're at reception. Well, how can you be a pioneer in everything you do to help our customers? And by the way, they also do monthly. They pick one value each month and champion in that. And so it's a wonderful thing. And by the way, if you're saying, well, okay, this is a little soft here, well, just go to the Zappos example, right? I mean, Zappos was in big trouble. Who knows if they were about to go out of business? But when Tony Hsieh took over the company, one of the first things he did was get the values straight. And by the way, he used the employees, had the help of the employees to generate what those values would be. And so they generated 10 values. And of course, ultimately, that transformed the organization. And it was sold, as you may or may not know, to Amazon for about $1.2 billion. So this is, the softer side of making a lot of money. Okay. So that's the organizational side of this. I want to talk about, and I'm going to talk for another 15 minutes or so, and then we're going to open it up to questions, because I want to make sure we hit those questions and meet your needs here from the audience standpoint. So the second level, if you will, is the team thing. All right. And if you're in an organization, like most organization, and even Fortune 500s, which kind of blows my mind, okay, we've got a challenge. We got this big business challenge. Our sales have gone down. The new products aren't, finding, their rightful place in the marketplace, et cetera, et cetera. We have a logistics challenge, a sales challenge, whatever it is. What do? It's okay, let's get some guys together and we'll brainstorm, right? Okay. And, you shouldn't do that. Actually, brainstorming is okay. As you may or may not know, it's an actual technique. It was invented in the late 1930s by Alex Osborne, the O of BBDO agency. And the two basic rules of brainstorming are what? There are, quote, no bad ideas, and quantity will equal quality. No bad ideas is not correct, of course. Most of the ideas in a session are bad. Only about 10 or 15% are any good. But the bigger thought there is really withhold judgment. And that's tremendously valuable and an important principle of this ideation work. So withhold judgment, absolutely. And quantity will equal quality. And it's not that these are wrong, they're absolutely correct, but they're really only the starting place. And so if you have a challenge, yeah, you can do a brainstorm and you may get some ideas right away, and that's fine. But for those difficult challenges, the intractable ones, the ones that we're, because of COVID having to deal with, and on and on and on, you need to, in my opinion and experience, totally rethink your thinking about this and not do brainstorming, but do what are called ideation techniques and processes and meetings. And the one word that distinguishes and captures the essence of how ideation is different than brainstorming is really stimuli. It's really about triggering the brain in all kinds of ways. And by the way, there are now, since the 80 years since brainstorming came to be known, there are now literally dozens and scores and hundreds of different ideation techniques. In my work, we've identified 4 categories of these. So they're questioning techniques that are great for strategy challenges. They're visual techniques, which are great for market insights. There are metaphorical techniques, which are the preferred techniques of inventors throughout history. And then there's a whole range of sort of other, but really fun, quote, fantasy techniques, worst idea, silly idea, et cetera, et cetera. So this is key learning number 1 for the audience here, is that you want to go into these ideation sessions prepared with different techniques that are going to trigger new ideas. And by the way, creativity is pretty simple. It's this thing plus that thing, you mash them together and you get a new thing. When we were working with Chips Ahoy Cookie, we used a problem semantic intuition technique. It was invented by Battelle in Germany. And we mashed together desserts and a new form, which was different kinds of forms, layers, pinwheels, et cetera, different kinds of desserts, brownies, pies, et cetera. We mashed those together, and that led to the Brownie Chips Ahoy, which has become a huge success to them. By the way, don't let anybody tell you this stuff is hard. I know, having worked with rocket science, it's not rocket science. It's simple, and often the best ideas, you probably also know, are also simple. So Brownie Chips Ahoy, the food engineers figured out how to put a layer of, in this case, brownie inside a chocolate chip cookie, and they're fantastic. I mean, they're wonderful. And quick anecdote, I happened to be at the store soon after this thing launched. And of course, a woman was buying it. So I had to ask her, why'd you buy that? And she looked at me like I'm this total idiot, saying, it's a brownie inside a chocolate chip cookie. It's like, what else do you need to know? And that's sometimes the case with these things, right? They can be very, very simple, but it's been a huge success, because once they figured out how to put a layer inside of this cookie, then they put fudge in there, they put red velvet cake, they put s'mores, all these wonderful fillings. And so that's become a huge line or platform for them. Okay, so that's the big learning here. Don't do brainstorming. Use ideation and use those stimuli to trigger all kinds of new ideas. Okay, the final thing. So you're saying, okay, that's great, but I'm an individual entrepreneur, or I want to start my own company, sole proprietorship. What can I do to come up with a breakthrough new idea, either an entirely new idea for a business or something to evolve my current business? And so, I actually was asked this question by Bob Dorff. Some of you may recognize his name. He's one of the gurus of the lean innovation movement with Steve Blank. He wrote the Startup Owner's Manual. Bob is a friend. He teaches entrepreneurship at Columbia. And he came to me and he said, can you create a course or workshops for my students for their entrepreneurial ventures? And I said, well, what are you talking about? He said, well, only about 1 in 10 or 1 in 15 are any good. He said, if I see one more cuisine app, I'm going to shoot myself, And so can you create a process to help, these entrepreneurial students come up with bigger and better ideas? And I said, well, let me think about it. And I went on vacation and to develop that process, I did something kind of fun and creative. I gave myself the challenge of coming up with a big idea, which I thought, an idea that I thought would be good enough to start a business every day for 30 days. And so it turns out that's not that easy to do. I mean, you have to really, really work at it to get a quote big idea, because again, only 1 in 10 of your ideas are going to be any good. So I did that. And each day I came up with quote a big idea, one that I was satisfied. By the way, just so you know, I changed this from 30 days to 21 days because it was hard. And so that's why I named the book 21 Days to a Big Idea. So in that process, and the reason I went through that process of doing it myself is because I wanted to develop a process that I knew would work. And while I'm developing the process, I'm testing it on myself. And so that's what that book is all about. And so in that book, there are all kinds of techniques that we use in our business to help our clients get new ideas. But for the individual, there are also sort of 4 major platforms that you can use to come up with a big idea for a new business. And those 4 platforms we identified. The first one is adaptive technology. The second one is help an organization or individuals with self-actualization. And as I listen to TCU's mission and values, right? That self-actualization, even that's not the word to use, but that's a big part of what TCU's mission is, right? And the other 2 are save either a person or a company or an organization time, and another one is save money. And so those were the 4 major platforms against which many ideas can be generated. So just to give you a concrete example, one example that I used in the book, adaptive technology. So where do you find the technologies? Well, you read all the current state of the art out there. You have Time Magazine, the trend stuff, their trend services, Cassandra, et cetera, et cetera. Sparks and Honey has a daily briefing on new trends. You can find these new technologies. And so I came across a technology, an Israeli inventor. He had come up with a $12 bicycle, okay? And that $12, because he had figured out a way to treat cardboard to make it very strong and rain resistant, right, and water resistant. And so he was able to create this, bike for $12, almost a disposable bike, right? So, if you have the entrepreneurial mindset, when you're reading that, you say, well, wait a second, he did it for a bike. What else could I do it for, right? And so when I went out for a run, I had read that and I came up with 30, 40, 50 ideas, whatever it was, on how to take that technology and turn it into a viable new product. And so one of them was, I think I called it like an entertainment center. Anyway, the idea was let's create a disposable stroller or a stroller, an entertainment center stroller. And so the mom or dad is shopping with the kid, and you give them crayons and you let them, draw all kinds of picture over on the cardboard of this thing. Because why? Because it's kind of disposable and you don't care. They can wreck it, right? And another idea was let's create a business where you're at the beach and you're able to sort of manufacture sandals, right? Or for kids. And I thought the coolest thing was, what if you manufactured it so you could print or print the name of the kid on the bottom of the sandal. And so when the kid goes walking, if they get lost, you can track them down because you've seen where their names were in the sand. I mean, these are kind of crazy ideas, but I wanted to give you concrete examples of how to turn a technology into a new business. Okay, so that's what I wanted to share with you, sort of at 3 levels here. One of the important takeaways, though, that's really key is that this is not just for new products. This could be, you can use these techniques and technologies and advances in creative thinking, if you will, for anything. I don't care what it is. If you looked at our client list, and I went through, and there were over 50 different kinds of assignments we've worked on. So a new sales strategy, we got a call from one of the big 3 automakers. Can you help us invent, a new sales forecasting system? Oh my gosh, and no mathematicians allowed, right? Can you help us with the logistics? Can you help us with cost cutting? Can you help us with strategy? And the answer as a consultant is always, yes, I can. And meanwhile, not knowing what the heck we're going to do, but you kind of figure it out. So it's important to know that no matter what field you're in, no matter what department you're in, finance, R&D, market, it doesn't matter. All of these techniques can be applied to getting more and better ideas. And if you want to thrive, and if you want to get promoted, my strong bias is that you need to be an idea person. I don't think there's been one famous entrepreneur that wasn't at some level an idea person. So how are we doing here? 9:35. So I'll stop now, and Dan's been patiently waiting to funnel some of the students' questions in here, and turn it over to Dan to maybe give me some questions.
All right. Well, thank you, Bryan. And yeah, we did have an opportunity to visit with a number of our students before this session, and they came up with some really great questions. So I might want to start with some student questions. So if you're an entrepreneurship or innovation major, which we have in the Neely School, we're really proud of that program. Perhaps some of this is very in step with those students' expectations. But you mentioned marketing, you mentioned finance, some of the other disciplines. How would you apply the power of ideation to students that are pursuing those tracks?
Well, yeah. So marketing is easy, right? Because it's new products, and you can do the wish technique, you can do semantic intuition, you can actually use all 4 of those kinds of ideation techniques I talked about. I'll give one quick example. We were working on a new product. We were working with P&G, Clairol division, and can you help us invent a new hair color? Okay, and this was for older women, actually also older men. A fairly high percentage of men use women's hair color, actually, because it's high quality. Anyway, so we did. This was kind of a research methodology. We had the people there are the consumers. And by the way, we're tremendous believers in talking to the consumers, right? You sort of begin and end with the consumer or customer. We had women do collages of how they felt before they colored their hair and after they colored their hair. And these collages just totally blew my mind as a male. I'm looking at the women, before it looked like Armageddon, they're feeling self-image as well. They felt terrible about themselves. And the after collages are like, dancing through the fields and light and sunshine. And that gave us real insight into the fact how important getting hair color is for women. I hope this doesn't sound politically incorrect, but I'll never forget, I was talking to a woman in Stamford, Connecticut. She showed me her collages, and she said, for me, I don't think I can can give back to the world, and because unless my hair color is right. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And she said, well, it's all about my self-esteem and self-image. And if I don't feel good about myself, I don't feel I can give back to the world. Oh my God. Okay. So that's, from the marketing standpoint, promotional ideas, PR ideas, et cetera, content strategy, all of these techniques are time tested, right? Finance, whatever your finance challenge is. I mean, my business partner, Gary Fraser, was a finance major at Wharton, and a couple things. Number one, in the future, I am convinced that there will be more and more cross-functional teams, because that's critical to success. So as a finance major, you will probably most likely find yourself on an innovation team. And as a finance person, you bring, the reality of, can we make this thing profitable? And so you're going to be asking really interesting questions about, where else could we take this? How could we take this? Can we try this? And the other thing too is, you also probably as a finance major find that you'll be doing joint ideation sessions with other departments. Besides being part of these, we call them DIG teams or disruptive innovation group teams, you'll also find yourself, coordinating with IT. I remember we did a session for a large pharma company and said, how can finance and IT work together in a much more efficient way to save money and do a better job of serving our clients? So it doesn't matter. The ideas are going to be critical.
Well, you just mentioned IT. How has the notion or the power of ideation had to change as a result of COVID-19? I mean, are you doing virtual ideation teams, or what has stuck around and what's been amplified?
Oh, thank you for that question. It's fantastic. February or March 14th, we had a dozen assignments in-house. March 15th, we ended up with one, and so we, like everybody else, had to pivot. And so we pivoted to the obvious thing, which is to do virtual ideation. And I was frankly a bit skeptical that this would work. I mean, we've done virtual ideation for the past 15 years. We've worked with global teams and et cetera, but these tended to be asynchronous. So, you wouldn't have to do them in real time. You'd send out challenges, people would send back ideas, you put those together, you'd resend them back. And so you'd get global teams working on this stuff, but not really in real time. And so we were tasked with doing that. And it turns out quite a bit now for a lot of different clients. And I've been shocked that how well it's worked. And I feel it's a blessing for the world that the technology showed up just in time, Zoom, Microsoft Teams, et cetera. And so those have been fantastic. I mean, the technology is viable. The breakout rooms work great. We did some consulting with Pepsi on one of their facilitators. And so we built breakout rooms with all kinds of stimuli. Remember how important stimuli is? And so we're inventing new packaging. And so, it could be some stimuli for that. Well, we got packages from nature, right? Pea pods and et cetera, eggs, and use those to trigger new packaging ideas. So the virtual ideation has worked great. And there are actually some advantages. You can get people, not unlike your speaker here, from around the country, around the world, to show up for these things. And they don't have to travel, obviously. You can also, we tend to do, whereas we had a 2-day strategy session we were doing for a plastics company. And we instead of doing 2-day strategies with our executive team, we broke it up into 4 2.5-hour sessions over a 3 or 4 week period. It was fantastic. And by the way, you can invite different people to each of these mini sessions, right? So that was one thing. And also, you have soak time, right? Which is this time to think about the ideas we had in session 1 or session 2 or session 3 and build on those. And if you're doing a 2-day session, everybody's drinking after the first night. I'm kidding. But this, we get real soak time, right? Over time. And it also helps me as the designer and facilitator of these sessions to redesign if I have to. So the virtual ideation has been fantastic. Again, I've been surprised how well it's worked. By the way, the exception, we've actually done a bunch of in-person ones. The exception has been when clients have wanted their customers to ideate with them. we recently we meaning I flew out to Idaho to do a session for a drilling company, with 16 of their top clients, and we ideated together. But they wanted to build that relationship, so we all did that in person. By the way, the travel was fantastic. There was nobody on the plane. And then the second thing I would say from a research standpoint, qualitative research, as I said, we're big believers in that. Focus groups, I have a local focus group facility here. After 25 years in business, they closed down. But what they did, they evolved their business into virtual focus groups. And those have worked great too. We'll have 5 people, in each session, because you don't want too many. Normally you'd have 7 or 8, and we'll have 5 people. And you have the people on the Zoom, but you also have, quote, a back room. There are different services, focus vision, viewpoint, et cetera, which allow the client it's like they're behind the glass. So we've approximated everything that you would want, frankly, in a normal in-person, focus group session. So again, I'm thankful that all this technology is out there, because it's really enabled us to survive as a business, as an innovation agency.
Yeah. So the technology certainly is enabling, this pivot, sounds like in a constructive way. The other side of technology is that, at least if my 2 boys are proxy, it can be pretty distracting, and sometimes I have trouble getting them to focus on whatever the problem to be solved is, or the task at hand. How are you seeing people interact with technology, and how do you bring them back to focus so they can actually conduct the ideation in a positive way?
Well, a couple of things. We obviously use technology in a big way to design our sessions. So technology is really good from that standpoint. In terms of the kids, I had a eureka moment with my kids. They're grown now, but when they were somewhat younger, we go out to celebrate a birthday party. How you doing? Fine. What's going on? Nothing. Classic teenagers, right? And we were working on a naming assignment, and I happened to bring it up to the group, and it's like, oh, Dad. But then I was shocked at how great my kids were at coming up with ideas for the name of this new product. And I think, for the parents out there, do some creative challenges with the kid, and you could use technology to help you research triggers. We're trying to invent a new cookie. Okay, let's go find some desserts on technology, and then come back and say, okay, what kind of ideas could you get from that? So trying to transform it as an enemy and an ADD builder into something you can use as for ideation. But the key is, as a parent or a manager or leader, to continually challenge your coworkers to come up with ideas. And by the way, this is important. You shouldn't have general challenges. You should have very, very specific challenges. So it's not how do we cut costs, or how do we improve customer service? That's too general. Could be something like, how do we improve customer service for 25-year-old males who are in the market for a new truck, on a Thursday, right? That kind of specificity, believe it or not, will actually trigger more and better ideas than if you just say, hey, who's got some ideas on customer experience? So paradoxically, the more specific you can be often in your challenges, the more ideas you'll get. And the last thing I'll share is that, you can we have a technique called whiteboarding, where you take out a whiteboard, post a challenge, put some stimuli in there, and encourage everybody in the office to do this, to add ideas over a 7 or 10 day period. The cool thing is now you can certainly do that virtually. But we helped Armor All. They did this, didn't cost them anything. They invented a new package for one of their new products just by putting this challenge in the lunchroom. And we've experimented with it, with the comptroller's office of the state of New York and city of New York, and the accounting department at Kraft, and it'll work for every department. And as a manager, the cool thing is, if you do this technique, first of all, you'll get ideas. Your employees will feel great about contributing. And also, as a manager, it enables you and a leader to send the message about what you think is important. Because if you're saying we need to improve customer service, or we need to experience, or we need to improve sales, or we need to invent new products, the challenges you put up there are reflective of your priorities and the organization's priorities. And this gets back to, of course, to your mission, vision, values, and your growth strategies, of course. But I would also, we invented this because one of our clients asked us to, suggestion boxes, for the most part, with the exception of, Frito-Lay and some other companies, have been big failures because they haven't followed up appropriately. And there is not also the interactivity. When you have a whiteboard technique, people can build on each other's ideas in extraordinary ways. And if it's a 10-day challenge and you walk by on day 7 and you're just, you're going to the water cooler and you happen to see this, and all of a sudden you make connections between two things that were before unrelated, you get those wonderful eureka moments. It's fantastic. And so hopefully this is a technique that many of you will try out there, but it's important to know you've got to do some follow-up, right? You can't just, because otherwise people will be cynical of the process, and you have to put a deadline on it. So you get these ideas, you could use them to trigger ideation sessions, you could use them, in this case, invent a new product. It could be for anything. I went on and on, but there you go.
Well, I want to go back to something you said early on in your remarks, which is around, being more inductive and working from the bottoms up, even if maybe conventional prevailing wisdom, over time has been sort of a top-down led approach to innovation. Talk to us about the kind of the change management process, or how do you sell that idea to, say, a management team when you're being engaged?
Well, one way we sell it is we charge a lot less than McKinsey. That's one way we sell it. But the rationale and the logic behind it, I think, is really good, because it's, again, if you're working on a specific project, you can justify, if you're a manager or CEO, you can justify the expense because you're going to get a return on that investment. If you're just starting on the culture change thing, and by the way, I love this quote I created. It was called, "You don't innovate by changing the culture, you change the culture by innovating." Which, it's Kennedy-esque, but the point of that is, that inductive approach to it. But you can get an immediate return on your investment. And frankly, it's been our experience that the processes that are created are so much better because they're in response to the realities of your interests, your markets, your particular business. A software business has to, frankly, come up with new products a lot faster than a CPG firm. So the tailoring of it is in my opinion, fantastic. And then the other way we sell it is we get referrals, people we've worked with before. Probably 80% of our business comes from people we've worked with before, and they'll often go from one company to another. For us, that's a nice day, because they'll hire us into this new company. I don't know if I answered your question or not, but that's the reality of having a small boutique innovation agency. I certainly give speeches and webinars and do things like this, but most of our work, 80% of it, comes from previous work we've done and people we know.
Well, I guess my last question, because I know we've got to get everybody to their 9 o'clock meetings, Zoom or otherwise, is something that's been on my mind. And I'm talking to a lot of students right now. I mean, it's the middle of the spring semester, graduation's just around the corner. Students are weighing, job offer A versus job offer B, trying to figure out, how to take that big next step. Any last sort of advice for our forthcoming graduates as they are embarking on their career?
Yeah, one thing I would say is go watch my TEDx talk, because there's more specificity in there about real-world examples and some of these techniques. Go read some of my books, or Micah Mahalko's book on Thinker Toys, or Andy Van Gundy's book, or the Disney Imagineering Way workout book. It doesn't matter. Just learn these techniques. The other thing I would say is that I've got a new book coming out next year, assuming the publisher gets off the dime here, and it's Solving Impossible Challenges, and it's it gets at a lot of the sort of personal business challenges. And these techniques can not only be used for, quote, business challenges, but personal business challenges. I'll give one quick example, and then we'll end it. Procrastination, right? Some of us are procrastinators, right? And in business, and long story short, we mind mapping, which is a technique which was invented by Tony Buzan in the mid 1960s, and it's a way to visualize everything that's on your mind, their visuals, their diagramming, their keywords. If you go online and just put in mind mapping, you'll see all kinds of how-tos and ways to do that. It's in my books, etc. But we had a client who was, almost disabled because of their procrastination. And so ultimately we said, well, listen, do a mind map of everything that would go in your presentation. Don't do the presentation, just do a mind map. And that turned out to be a way to break through procrastination, because I said, you're not doing the presentation, you're just doing a brain dump here. And that worked beautifully. And the last story I'll share is my business partner, Gary Fraser. He had a reunion at Middlebury, and they 25th year reunion, and they said, well, send in a summary of what you've been doing for your life. And he procrastinated, said, and finally, he just did a mind map of his life. He put himself and his family in the center, diagrammed off at work stuff, vacation stuff, the kids. And rather than using that to actually write the 300-word summary, he just sent in the mind map. And they printed that, and it was the only one that was visual in the entire summary of all the graduates that came back. And the other thing that was extraordinary was everybody came up to him and said, yours is the only one I read and looked at. And by the way, how was that trip to the Grand Canyon, right? Or how are the kids doing, or whatever. And then the last part of it was the wonderful thing. The reunion committee the next year called on and said, by the way, can we use your mind map as an example of how people might summarize their life? So the point here is that all this stuff, you graduates, can be used not only to improve your business career, but can also be used to improve your life.
All right, I love it. Well, thank you, Bryan, for whetting our appetite to dive deeper as to really designing for innovation, whether it's through culture, whether it's through teams, or at the individual level. Love their remarks about the specificity actually opening up, possibilities, and certainly, how you prioritize innovation and that really bring it into each and everything that you do. So I appreciate the inspiring talk.
Thank you, Daniel. A lot of fun.
Excited to have you as part of the Horned Frog family for sure. So
I love it. I'm a Horned Frog. Does this make me sort of an honorary Horned Frog at this point?
Absolutely. Yes, your jacket's looking more and more purple by the minute. Sure. But anyway, it's a great place. We're glad you're a part of it. As we wrap up, I just want to thank our sponsors for allowing us to conduct this great speaker series. I want to remind everybody of some of the exciting lifelong learning opportunities with our executive ed program. We have an amazing executive MBA program that continues to rise in the rankings, top 15 in the world, top 5 in the US, and number 1 in Texas, perhaps most importantly. Obviously it's a great program. So if you or anyone on your team is looking for that extension of education, prepare for the next level, we'd encourage you to check that out. Coming up, we have one more TESS event later in the semester, just about a month's time. Tom Morris, another author of Plato's Lemonade Stand, will be with us, and we could not be excited to end the year on that high note as well. So long story short, it's almost 9. Everybody's been great to invest their time, talent, and energy with us today. And once again, please give a big Horned Frog thank you to Bryan Mattimore.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. It was a lot of
fun.
fun.
See you next time.
Happy St. Pat's.
Yeah, absolutely. Bye-bye.
Bye.